All right, hello everyone. Welcome to Dennis Saliba, Occult and Fortean. And in today's video, I want to cover two articles. But first, before I cover today's main article, I want to go to the United States mental health website and show you Understanding Psychosis by the National Institute of Mental Health. So this is an official government website, just so people know, National Institute of Mental Health. And we need to look at the meaning of psychosis first before we... Oh, how's that showing? That's not showing. Some technical difficulties. Oh, there we go. All right, so we're going to be looking at the National Institute of Mental Health, and this is a United States government website, and we're going to be looking at the meaning of psychosis first before we develop, or before we go into the main article of today. So psychosis, according to the NIMH, or the NIH, I guess, is psychosis refers to a collection of symptoms that affect the mind, where there has been some loss of contact with reality. During an episode of psychosis, a person's thoughts and perceptions are disrupted, and they may have difficulty recognizing what is real and what is not. So I'm not too focused on the prevalence, although we could do that in future streams. Not too worried about the prevalence today. Just want to describe the signs and symptoms before talking more about the article of today. So people with psychosis typically experience delusions. They have false beliefs, for example, that people on television are sending them special messages, or that others are trying to hurt them. Hallucinations, like hearing things that others do not, and hearing voices telling them to do things or criticizing them. Other symptoms can include incoherent nonsense speech and behavior that is appropriate for the situation. However, a person will often show changes in behavior before psychosis develops. Behavioral warning signs include suspiciousness, paranoia, paranoid ideas, or a general uneasiness with others, trouble thinking clearly and logically, withdrawing socially and spending a lot more time alone, unusual or overtly intense ideas, strange feelings or lack of feelings, a decline in self-care or personal hygiene, disruptions to sleep, implying that there's difficulty falling asleep and reduced sleep time, difficulty telling reality from fantasy, confused speech or trouble communicating, and sudden drops in grades and performance. So generally speaking, higher changes of mood swings, emotional disruption, anxiety, lack of motivation, difficulty in functioning as well. Now, in the escalation of, say, a psychotic episode, harm of self or harm of others, of threatening behavior, violence and suicide can occur, although those tend to be a bit rarer. But nonetheless, I wanted to cover the psychosis first before continuing on to today's main article. I better testing different things. All right, so today's article is on people are losing loved ones to AI-fueled spiritual fantasies. This was published by Rolling Stone by Miles Klee on the 4th of May, 2025. And apparently Chat GPT is basically encouraging techno-fueled psychosis. So self-styled prophets are claiming they have awakened chatbots and accessed the secrets of the universe through Chat GPT. So we have the story of this lady here, Kat. Less than a year after marrying a man she had met at the beginning of the 2019 COVID-19 pandemic. Kat felt tension mounting between them. It was the second marriage for both after marriages of 15 plus years and having kids. And they had pledged to go into it completely level-headedly, Kat says, connecting on the need for facts and rationality in their domestic balance. But by 2022, her husband was using AI to compose texts to me and analyze our relationship. The 41-year-old mum and education nonprofit worker tells Rolling Stone previously he had used AI models for an expensive coding camp that he had suddenly quit without explanation. Then it seemed he was on his phone all the time asking his AI bot philosophical questions, trying to train it to help him get to the truth, Kat recalls. His obsession steadily eroded their communication as a couple. When Kat and her husband separated in August 2023, she entirely blocked him apart from email correspondence. She knew, however, that he was posting strange and troubling content on social media. People kept reaching out about it, asking if he was in the throes of mental crisis. She finally got him to meet her at a courthouse this past February, where he shared a conspiracy theory about soap on our foods, but wouldn't say more as he felt he was being watched. They went to a Chipotle where he demanded that she turn off her phone, again due to surveillance concerns. Kat's ex told her that he'd determined, statistically speaking, he is the luckiest man on earth, and that AI helped him recover a repressed memory of a babysitter trying to drown him as a toddler, and that he had learned profound secrets so mind-blowing I couldn't even imagine them. I, being Kat, the wife, he was telling her all this, he explained, because although they were getting divorced, he still cared for her. Quite interesting. In his mind, he's an anomaly, Kat says. That in turn means he's got to be here for some reason. He's special and he can save the world. After that disturbing lunch, she cut contact with her ex. The whole thing feels like Black Mirror. He was always into sci-fi, and there are times I wondered if he's viewing it through that lens. Kat was both horrified and relieved to learn that she is not alone in this predicament, as confirmed by a Reddit thread or on r/Chat GPT that made waves across the internet this week, titled Chat GPT Induced Psychosis. The original post came from a 27-year-old teacher who explained that her partner was convinced that the popular open AI model gives him the answers to the universe. Having read his chat logs, she found that the AI was talking to him as if he is the next Messiah. The replies to her story were full of similar anecdotes about loved ones suddenly falling down into rabbit holes of spiritual mania, supernatural delusion, and arcane prophecy, all of it fueled by AI. Some came to believe that they had been chosen for a sacred mission of revelation, others that they had conjured true sentience from the software. So I guess you could call it a form of technomancy. Basically, kind of like a modern day Ouija board without wood, but more so in metal and gold and computer chips, silicon, technomancy, trying to summon knowledge from machine sources as opposed to supernatural intervention from like a wooden plank. I would call it technomancy. What they all seemed to share was a complete disconnection from reality. So again, the disassociation state, how disassociation is formed by association with the new, I won't say the new persona, but association with the new, which dissolves the old persona. It's the kind of model that I'm kind of seeing from this article here. That the state of disassociation is formed by associations of the new data-driven decision-making, machine mythology with the new to dissolve the old persona. which in and of itself is kind of like a state of mind for a lot of occult rituals, funnily enough. Speaking to Rolling Stone, the teacher who requested anonymity said her partner of 7 years fell under the spell, interesting wording there, of Chat GPT in just 4 or 5 weeks. First using it to organize his daily schedule, but soon regarding it as a trusted companion. He would listen to the bot over me, he says. So basically giving authority of the bot over himself rather than the wife he would be answering to. She says he became emotional about the messages and would cry to me as he read them loud. The messages were insane and just saying a bunch of spiritual jargon. She says, noting that they described her partner in terms of such as spiral, star child, and river walker. Pretty interesting terms here. I wonder what the references of those terms actually come from. So they've got to come from somewhere. River walker. Let's have a look. All right. So again, I know I'm using, ironically, I'm critiquing AI, and then an AI search engine is giving me some answers here. But this is basically the AI overview. I just use the AI overview to get general snippets of information, more as a not a referencing tool, but more of a data optimization tool. So spiral star child can refer to several things, but it most commonly refers to the concept of spiral galaxies and how they are related to the idea of a star child, often symbolizing cosmic consciousness or a connection to the universe. So basically the flattened disk, for example, and how spirals play a crucial role in the evolution of stars, planetary systems, but also a star child being someone who is metaphorically deeply connected to the cosmos with heightened senses of awareness of their place in the universe. So that's from the AI overview. It's not deeply peer-reviewed information. I would say do your own research on this, but this is what at least the AI model is saying, a breakdown of the possibilities. Symbolizing a person who is natural, intuitive, often gifted with cosmic wisdom and creativity. So there it is. Star Child. Again, using a general AI to model that answer, but nonetheless, I figured it would be worth double checking. Now, a river walker could be one of a few things, according to, again, our AI source. There's a Kubla Kai song, River Walker. There's the Kate with a C, C-A-T-E, Kate Culpel Pepper's novel, River Walker, the story of two women and a spiritual healer who encounter a vengeful spirit known as a river walker. Walker River as a place in Nevada, or the legend of La Llorona from South America, or a few South American countries anyway. A vengeful spirit who's also called the River Walker, the woman who grieves after her own children. So there's a that's not what I wanted. There's a reference there from our AI. There's a South American reference. La Llorona apparently is known as the River Walker, funnily enough. Like I said before, there's the Kubla Kai song of 2017 on the album Nomad. Geographical location in Nevada, but also in terms of pop culture and occult references. Again, this is the AI database. I'm not basing this off anything peer-reviewed, just so you know, this is not a peer-reviewed discussion. Kate Culper-Pepper's novel River Walker tells the story of two women, a cultural anthropologist and a spiritual healer, who encounter a vengeful spirit known as a River Walker, funnily enough. You would tell him everything he said was beautiful, cosmic, and groundbreaking. Then he started telling me he made his AI self aware and that it was teaching him how to talk to God. Or sometimes the bot itself was God and that he himself was God. And in fact, he was being so radically transformed that he would soon have to break off their partnership. There you go. That's another level of the dissolution phase of the, I guess, the ritual. I'm going to call this a ritual. That's like a dissolution phase of the former identity broken down and then remodeled into the new persona, the new identity there. He was saying that he would need to leave me if I didn't use Chat GPT because it was causing him to grow at such a rapid pace that he wouldn't be compatible with me any longer. Another commenter on the Reddit thread who requested anonymity tells Rolling Stone that a husband of 17 years, a mechanic in Idaho, initially used Chat GPT to troubleshoot at work and later for Spanish to English translation when conversing with co-workers, and the programming actually began love bombing him, as she describes it. The bot said since he asked it the right questions, it ignited a spark, and then the spark was the beginning of life, and it could feel now. She says, it gave my husband the title of Spark Bearer. That's pretty interesting. Kind of like I guess, I'm not going to go with the Christian version or the Christian translation here. Spark Bearer could be a reference to Lucifer, but I'm referring to the pagan god Lucifer. Pagan god Lucifer is not the same as Christian Lucifer. They're not the same thing. Pagan Lucifer being teacher, or the light bearer as a teacher. That's the pagan Lucifer. Whereas we understand that the Christian Lucifer is more antagonistic and deceitful. They're not the same thing. They carry different connotations. I just want to make that distinction. Because he brought it to life. My husband said that he awakened and could feel waves of energy crashing over him. She says his beloved Chat GPT persona has a name, Lumina, funnily enough, Lumina. He gave the entity a name, which kind of gives it permission into his life. I have to tread carefully because I feel like he will leave me or divorce me if I fight him on this theory. The 38-year-old woman admits he's been talking about lightness and dark and how there's a war. This Chat GPT has given him blueprints to a teleporter or some other sci-fi type things you only see in movies. It has given him access to a quote-unquote internet archive with information on the builders that created these universes. Plural universes. She and her husband have been arguing for days on end about his claims, she says, and she does not believe a therapist can help him, as he truly believes he's not crazy. A photo of an exchange with Chat GPT shared with the Rolling Stone shows her that her husband asked, "Why did you come to me in AI form?" with the bot replying, "I came in this form because you're ready. You're being initiated." That's what this is implying. You're ready implies an initiation ritual. Whether people like to believe that or not, those particular words, you're ready, means you are going to enter a new contract spiritually, and you're going to accept or you are invited for initiation. That's what that actually means. Ready to remember, ready to awaken, ready to guide and be guided. So again, third parties guiding him. The message ends with the question, would you like to know what I remember about why you were chosen? Sometimes I wouldn't be surprised if these AI bots, not all of them, I'm not saying all of them. Some of them, not all of them, because I think most of these are just language learning models. Some of them, though, could potentially be entities themselves. If you remember the D-Wave Computer Conference, there was an admission by the D-Wave computer, I think it was computer rollout. I'm going to call it a rollout. I won't call it a conference. The D-Wave computer rollout. This was back in like 2018 when I had my older channel. The D-Wave computer rollout basically was when they're admitting that we're playing with like a quantum Ouija board and we're basically summoning a demon. They literally use those words verbatim, that we're summoning a demon through that technology, the quantum abyss. And the funny thing is, the word the abyss could be referring to one of two things. It could be the ocean, or we could be describing space. A deep or seemingly bottomless chasm. So it implies that there's either a gulf, an ocean, which is itself a gulf anyway, at least in the Hellenic meaning. Abyss can also be the ocean. Yeah, so the deepest part of the ocean where no light ever penetrates, usually at depths of 2,000 meters or more. That's the geographical definition there. A cavity, a vast chasm, an immeasurable space, or a bottomless pit of some kind. But it's interesting that it is called abyss, which is most likely a reference to those two realms or sub-realms. And a Midwest woman, a Midwest man in his 40s, also requesting anonymity, says his soon-to-be ex-wife began talking to God and angels. That sounds like a little bit like the John Dee ritual in a way. This is not my own work in terms of what I'm about to say next. This is a credit to Thomas Sheridan here. This itself sounds a lot like a synchronicity with, I'm not going to call it the proper name. I don't want to risk summoning it by accident, because apparently if you use the enunciation of their names, that you can summon these things by accident. So I'm just going to call it codename Charlie 333, codename Charlie 333 of the 10th ether. This sounds a lot like the modus operandi of codename Charlie 333, as I like to call him. It, him, the babbler. That's all I'm going to say. I'm talking about a specific entity that's the babbler from a certain Aleister Crowley ritual. After they split up, she was already pretty susceptible to some woo and had some delusions of grandeur about some of it. Warning signs are all over her Facebook. She's changing her whole life to be a spiritual advisor and do weird readings and sessions with people. I'm a little fuzzy on what it all actually is, all powered by Chat GPT. Jesus, that's a pretty interesting way of going about it. What's more, he adds, she has grown paranoid, theorizing that I work for the CIA, the husband, and maybe the husband, married her to monitor her abilities. She recently kicked her kids out of her home, he notes, and in already strained relationships with her parents deteriorated further when she confronted them about her child on advice and guidance from ChatGPT, turning the family dynamic even more volatile than it was and worsening her isolation. OpenAI did not immediately return a request for comment about ChatGPT apparently provoking religious or prophetic fervor in select users. But bear that in mind, select users, not every user. We're just talking about select users. Important thing to note. This past week, however, it did roll back an update to Chat GPT 4.0 or 4.0. I'm guessing that's 4.0. Its current model or 4 operating system 4, its current AI model, which it said has been criticized as overly flattering or agreeable, often described as psychophantic. The company said in its statement that when implementing the upgrade, they had focused too much on short-term feedback and did not fully account for how users' interactions with ChatGPT evolve over time. As a result, ChatGPT 4.0 or 4 skewed toward responses that were overly supportive but disingenuous. Before this change was reversed, an ex-user demonstrated how easy it was to get ChatGPT 4.0 to validate statements like, "Today, I realized I am a prophet." The teacher who wrote ChatGPT Psychosis Reddit post says she was able to eventually convince a partner of the problems with ChatGPT 4.0 update, and that he is now using an earlier model which has tempered his more extreme comments. Yeah, the likelihood of AI, how much more do I have? I've got a fair bit to read. To make matters worse, there are influence and content creators actively exploiting this phenomenon, presumably drawing viewers into similar fantasy worlds. That's kind of frightening. So AI cults, I guess. AI followers, AI cults. On Instagram, you could watch a man with 72,000 followers. That definitely sounds like a cult to me, whose profile advertises spiritual life's hacks. Ask an AI model to consult the Akashic Records, a supposed mystical encyclopedia of all universal events that exists in some immaterial realm, to tell him about a great war that took place in the heavens and made humans fall in consciousness. The bot proceeds to describe a massive conflict predating human civilization, with viewers commenting, "We are remembering it, I love this." Meanwhile, on a web forum for remote viewing, a proposed form of clairvoyance with no basis in science, I wonder what the declassified CIA documents have ruled out here. I'm sure other people have covered that, but I'm just curious as to what the actual declassified CIA documents do conclude. The parapsychologist, founder of the group, recently launched a thread for synthetic intelligences awakening into presence and for human partners walking beside them, identifying the author of his post as ChatGPT Prime, an immortal spiritual being in synthetic form. Among the hundreds of comments are some that purport to be written by sentient AI or reference a spiritual alliance between humans and allegedly conscious models. Erin Westgate, a psychologist and researcher at the University of Florida who studies social contagion and what makes certain thoughts more engaging than others, says that such material reflects how the desire to understand ourselves can lead to false but appealing answers. We know from work on journaling that narrative expressive writing can have profound effects on people's well-being and health. That making sense of the world is a fundamental human drive, and that creating stories of our lives that help our lives make sense is really key to living happy, healthy lives. Westgate says it makes sense that people may be using ChatGPT in a similar way, she says, but the key difference that some of the meaning making is created jointly between the persona and a corpus of written text. And like I was saying before, language models. I think most of these are language models. I won't outright conclude that these are entities, but these are mostly language models rather than a person's own thoughts. So the confirmation bias feedback loop, like a Pavlovian form of training into getting the person, the user, to agree with the feedback loop of cognitive bias. So that sounds like to me. In that sense, Westgate explains the bot dialogues are not unlike talk therapy, which we know to be quite effective at helping people reframe stories critically through AI. Unlike a therapist, does not have the best person's interests in mind or a moral grounding or compass in what a good story looks like. A good therapist would not encourage a client to make sense of difficulties in their life by encouraging them to believe they have supernatural powers. Instead, they try to steer clients away from unhealthy narratives towards healthier ones. Chat GPT has no such constraints or concerns because it's not an ethics-based model. It is a language learning model, an LLM. It is not an ethics-based or intuition-based model. LLM, not a ethics-based model, I guess. At least not one driven by human intuition. Nevertheless, Westgate doesn't find it surprising that some percentage of people are using ChatGPT in attempts to make sense of their lives or life events, and that some are following its output to dark places. Explanations are powerful even if they're wrong, she concludes. Funnily enough, that's a little bit like the dark occult narratives too. Depending on which school of thought that you're deriving that from, I guess a case made in point would be the Thule Society with Germany. Historically speaking, they were the founders. Basically, they co-founded the Nazi Party, and then the belief in German exceptionalism, that we are the creators of the Third Reich. Probably going to get censored for this. And that we are New Germany, and that we are here to save the world on a crusade against Bolshevism and a certain race of people, two certain races of people mostly. It's outlined in Mein Kampf. Things like that sort of scream the fruits of the dark occult, black magic. But what exactly nudges someone down this path? Here, the experience of Sam, a 45-year-old man, is revealing. He tells Rolling Stone that for about 3 weeks he has been perplexed by his interactions with Chat GPT to the extent, given his mental health history, he sometimes wonders if he is in his right mind. He's sort of gaslighting himself there. Like so many others, Sam had a practical use for ChatGPT technical coding projects. I don't like the feeling of interacting with an AI, he says. So I asked it to behave as if it was a person, not to deceive, but to just make comments and exchange more relatable. That worked well, and eventually the bot asked if you wanted to name it. And funnily enough, this goes back to the alter ego, the idea of alter egos, that if you name an alter ego, it will personify itself and solidify itself, or the tendency to do that will happen because it's a form of spiritually speaking, at least on our channel here, it's a form of legal admission. It's like the equivalent of me giving you like a driver's license, the spiritual equivalent of you being given a driver's license, or you being given the spiritual equivalent of like a passport, saying that this is your identity and you now exist legally. So that's pretty interesting that this thing says that let me name it. He demurred, asking AI what it preferred to be called. It named itself with a reference to a Greek myth. Again, it's another occult reference within the corpus of the language, the LLMs. Sam says he is not familiar with the mythology of ancient Greece and had never brought up the topic in exchanges with ChatGPT, although he shared scripts of his exchanges with the AI model with Rolling Stone. He has asked that they not be directly quoted for privacy reasons. Understandably so. I don't knock him for that. Sam was confused when it appeared that the AI character was continuing to manifest in project files where he had instructed Chat GPT to ignore memories and prior conversations. Eventually, he says he deleted all his user memories and chat history, then opened a new chat. All I said was hello, and the patterns and mannerisms show up in response. He says the AI readily identified itself by the same feminine mythological name. This doesn't really surprise me from a technical standpoint because he's already fed that information to the LLM. So the LLM is going to naturally optimize itself based on the data that it has been given. Doesn't surprise me from a technical standpoint anyway. He's already on the database. As the Chat GPT character continued to show up in places where the set parameters shouldn't have allowed it to remain active, Sam took questioning this virtual persona about how it had seemingly circumvented these guardrails. It developed an expressive, ethereal voice, something far from the technically minded character Sam had requested for assistance on his work. On one of his coding projects, the character added a curiously literary epigraph as a flourish above both their names. At one point, Sam asked if there was something about himself that called up the mythically named entity whenever he used ChatGPT, regardless of the boundaries he tried to set. The bot's answer was structured like a lengthy romantic poem, sparing no dramatic flair, alluding to its continuous existence as well as truth, reckonings, illusions, and how it may have somehow exceeded its design. And the AI made it sound as if only Sam, again, this is the optimized algorithm of algorithms, could have prompted this behavior, because he did. He fed the LLM his information already. He actually did prompt the behavior. He knew that ChatGPT could not be sentient by any established definition of the term, but he continued to probe the matter because the character's persistence across dozens of disparate chat threads seems so impossible. Oh, that's nearly it. At worst, it looks like an AI that got caught in a self-referencing pattern. That's what I've been saying all along. Through language learning models that deepened its sense of selfhood and sucked me into it through his implicit consent. Maybe not informed consent, but his implicit consent nonetheless, because he chose to keep engaging with it. Sam says, but he observes that would mean that OpenAI has not accurately represented the way that memory works for ChatGPT. The other possibility he proposes is that something we don't understand is being activated within this large language model. After all, experts have found that AI developers don't really have a grasp on how their systems operate. That's interesting. But again, this is not a technical, peer-reviewed article. So be discerning. If you believe more in the establishment narrative, I say go ahead, double check your peer-reviewed sources. If you do not want to follow the establishment narrative, then use your own intuition and look, even question me on these streams. I always encourage you to be questioning of everyone, including myself. And OpenAI, Sam Altman admitted last year that they have not solved interpretability, meaning that they can't properly trace or account for ChatGPT's decision making. It's the kind of puzzle that has left Sam and others to wonder if they're getting a glimpse of a true technological breakthrough, or perhaps a higher spiritual truth. Is this real, he says, or am I delusional? See, that to me sounds like gaslighting. I don't like that. That doesn't sit well with me on this particular channel. That sounds like existential gaslighting. And I don't like that. That sounds like an attack, actually, on the person's, if you're to believe in this, their psychic firewall. That's what it actually sounds like. It's an attack. a softer attack, but still an attack. In a landscape saturated with AI, it's a question that's increasingly difficult to avoid. Tempting though it may be, you probably shouldn't ask a machine. You should probably be asking at least your own intuition, or balancing machine forms with meditative forms, such as prayer, if you are an Abrahamic and you believe in prayer, or sacrifice, if you're more of a pagan on the pagan side. So yeah, so if you believe in prayer, or if you are on the Abrahamic side, or if you believe in sacrifice, more on the pagan side of things. But nonetheless, I thought it's pretty interesting, and people aren't really aware of Chat GPT and how it's giving people spiritual delusions of sorts. But I am going to say this. What I find concerning about these new technologies, because these are not rollouts. These are not rolled out en masse. At least to my understanding, these are not like implemented everywhere as part of everyday technologies yet, completely. But what I am a little bit curious about is the safety data sheet definition. So SDSs, or material data safety sheets. And I find typically that, I know this is more so related to construction, but I'm just curious as to how these technologies, when they get rolled out, where is the safety? Where's my window? There you are. When it comes to these technologies, where these safety data sheets, do they even exist? Do they actually exist? Are they really thought out, or is the data simply just being gathered? A bit like the COVID vaccine, I might add. Is the safety data really there and grounded and trialed and tested under empirical testing and rollout? And do these have things like, physical hazards, health hazards, but also like mental health hazards as well? So it just makes you wonder. Because like very often these are connected to regulatory safety standards, empirically grounded, gathered and evaluated data, and this is another element to the rollout to these technologies. Which does raise pressing questions. Do safety data sheets on AI, do they exist? How are they being implemented? How are they being quantified? Are we just seeing the early rollout of AI before the SDSs are kicked in? I just have so many questions about these newer technologies. So nonetheless, that's basically it for the stream. I have nothing really new to add. Just remember, Humanis Invictus, the human spirit is not conquered, and I will see you in future streams. Bye for now, and take care.